Next week may be the end of the world as we know it, but the good news is that from Washington, D.C. to the Vatican, it's also the revenge of clarity. Bill Gates says the second pandemic is coming, oh my, and Francis gives a red hat to the most outspoken Trump basher in the American Catholic Church. Trump signs the Geneva Consensus Declaration, telling the UN pro-aborts to go back to hell where they belong. And finally, Steve Bannon speaks at the Catholic Identity Conference in Pittsburgh, and you won't believe what he said. All that and more tonight from the editor's desk. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Mack coming to you once again from the offices of the Remnant newspaper, just less than a week out now. The biggest election in well, really in the world. In the history of the world. Yeah, I'm a little worried. I'm in a minority. Lots of folks think that we're going to have a landslide for Trump. I'm not convinced that we won't have a landslide the other way, but we'll see. He's still down in the polls, and I just can't believe that the American people are still, pushing the button for this guy, Joe Biden. Because now Uncle Joe, last week we told you that he thought he was running for the U.S. Senate. Now, evidently, he thinks he's running against George Bush.
What kind of country we're going to be? 4 more years of George, he's going to find ourselves in a position where...
This poor guy. What's wrong with Mrs. Biden, do you suppose?
I'm not sure.
Why is Mrs. Biden wanting to put her husband through this? And we've been saying for a long time that what Joe Biden is, President Joe Biden will become the monument to the U.S. presidency. And they're going to tear down like they've been tearing all these statues down. And, he thinks he's going to win, and maybe so, because if the polls are wrong, Joe Biden is evidently going to win the White House the old-fashioned way. He's going to cheat.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
And the reality is, of course, it doesn't matter who's running against Trump right now. Could be Pee Wee Herman, could be Harvey Weinstein, Satan, it doesn't matter. Trump's running against the COVID Kool-Aid drinkers and this guy, Dr. Tony Hale-Bopp Fauci.
But to say that once you get a vaccine, we're going to be free to do whatever we want, that just is not going to happen, I would imagine, at least through 2021.
You still buying this? You still actually think this is about COVID? It's about keeping grandma safe? You're still going to vote for Joe Biden because he's going to make it all better? I mean, Trump, they're doing everything now, Trump's running against Bill, who never met a pandemic he doesn't like, Gates.
Well, this won't be the last pandemic that we face. So we, we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is, will get attention this time.
You feel that? It's suffocating, isn't it? Because they're not going to stop. It's hard to breathe when you listen to these guys. You realize what they have planned for us. Because you know exactly what Gates and Fauci and these guys, you know what they're actually talking about, right? They're playing with us. Those who are actually educated and still read, they know exactly what's going on. But they're going for the big, dumbed-down middle, Folks who don't know anything, the folks that haven't cracked a book since high school, and they're just imbibing whatever they can from TV and thinking it's gospel. But we know what's going on. The lockdowns, the masks, the social distancing, the control, the loss of civil liberties, the closed churches, it's all about one thing.
And I think, it's up to us as citizens to rebuild the world that we want. I think this crisis has exposed some of the gaps around the world, but particularly in the United States. And one of those in particular are the gender and the racial inequities that exist. The other thing I would say is not only has COVID exposed the gaps in the system, it's also showed us opportunities. Like the fact that kids could jump online and start learning. We know now it's possible, but all of a sudden people really said, oh my gosh, to not have to stand in line for my government payment where I might get sick, that is an opportunity we can use, and particularly use to reach low-income families and women on that phone with all kinds of things like cash transfers, more information about when health services are available.
Y'all heard of the Geneva Consensus Declaration? Probably not, because it hasn't made CNN. It hasn't made any news, in fact. But take a look at what's actually been going on recently with the Trump administration vis-a-vis abortion.
At its very core, the Declaration protects women's health, defends the unborn, and reiterates the vital importance of the family as the foundation of society. The Declaration restates that there is no international right to an abortion. It goes even further.
Have you heard about that? It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Especially you Catholic never-Trumpers out there, especially you, Pope Francis. Hey, Pope Francis, did you see that? The administration is trying to stop abortion in the world. And what are you doing? What's Uncle Joe doing? Uncle Joe, the Catholic. He's campaigning on abortion.
Considering the new Supreme Court nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, what are your particular plans to protect women's reproductive rights in the U.S.?
Number one, we don't know exactly what she will do, although the expectation is that she may very well move to overrule Roe. But the only responsible response to that would be to pass legislation making Roe the law of the land. That's what I would do.
That should be the end of it, right? The Catholic vote is key. It's vital. In a few days, we're going to go pull the lever. 52% of our brothers and sister Catholics, 50 years after Vatican II, 52% of us are going to vote for Joe Biden. And our Holy Father, Pope Francis, is not defending the unborn. No, he took this opportunity to defend gay unions.
Francis cementing his reputation as the Pope of surprises, saying in the new documentary Francesco, what we have to create is a civil union law. That way they are legally covered. I stood up for that.
Is he opening the door to gay marriage in the church?
The Pope is not opening up the door to gay marriage being celebrated in a mass, but he's opening up the door to people being approving of same-sex civil unions.
We've been saying for quite a while now that Francis is on the other side. Well, clearly he is. And I don't really care if you don't like that, or if you're afraid of that, or you think I'm causing trouble or dividing the church for pointing that out. But why don't you tell me how Francis isn't on the other side when in the middle of an election like this, he's doing things like that? You know, and it's not just abortion. I mean, the end of the world as we knew it, as we know it, could very well be at hand this afternoon. I was invited to be on a press call hosted by Trump 2020 campaign advisor Stephen Miller. It was practically begging the other members of the press on the call to figure it out, to understand that what we're now facing is an invasion such as the world has never seen in 2,000 years. This is what President Joe Biden has in store for our country. And as you listen to this, I want you to think about what it was that eventually crushed the Roman Empire. That was a barbarian invasion, wasn't it?
Biden represents the corrupt Washington establishment far-left policy that has invaded foreign countries and fought foreign wars and enmeshed us in foreign conflicts while having open borders to unlimited migration from the most dangerous places in the world. And you are literally overriding the career professionals and saying, even though this country isn't safe, even though this government isn't cooperating, even though the records are painfully inadequate, we are still going to let people in massive numbers, no matter what happens to our country.
These guys are campaigning on shutting us down, taking away our civil liberties, killing babies, and ushering in a barbarian invasion to shut this country down. And we're terrified of COVID. Did you see the problem here? You're terrified of this little virus, this little bug that's going to kill you? You know, I'd rather die of COVID than live in the new reality, the new normal that these psychopaths have in store for us. And don't forget, you can look it up. Please look it up. Please look up what the survival rate is up to now. It's 99+% of us are going to survive this thing. And yet you are going to vote for somebody who's going to shut us down, cause you to lose your job, kill your grandmother, kill your grandchildren in utero? That's what you're going to do because you're so terrified that you might get sick? Come on, people. Wake up. Wake up. only a fraction of 1 out of every 100,000 inhabitants of this country is going to succumb from COVID, has succumbed from COVID. 1 out of 100,000 of us. As of May 2020, 42% of all COVID-19 deaths in the U.S. had also occurred in nursing homes, primarily in states where the governors had forced long-term care facilities to accept infected patients. Don't you see what's happening here? According to the CDC, only 6% of the total COVID-19 related deaths in the U.S. had COVID-19 listed as the sole cause of death on the death certificate. You can stop being afraid. Remember this Monsignor Charles Pope rather famously got the COVID virus? And when he went in, everybody mocked him because he had questioned the lockdowns. Remember, he went in to the hospital finally, and everybody was talking about it, kind of gleeful that he had gotten it. He recovered months ago. Did you know that? You could Google it. You could read what he's saying right now. Even though he was among the very small percentage that had to go into ICU for a few days, he's writing articles saying, no, we cannot lock the country down over this. I've survived it. It was terrible. I had a very bad case of it. I'm still not going to support what they are doing to us, what they're doing to our children, to our future, to our churches. Why does his testimony not matter, Father Monsignor Charles Pope? Why doesn't it matter? He's one among so many high-profile people now who have contracted this thing, who've recovered, who are now doing just fine. But you don't hear about them on CNN, do you? You only hear about what's coming. No hospital beds. We're all going to die. How can we continue to put up with this? I know it's been hard on us. People have died. I get it. COVID has simply not been hard enough on us to warrant locking us down, closing our churches, imprisoning our elderly, taking our children out of schools for God knows how long. It isn't bad enough. And masked up and hiding in his basement, Uncle Joe is telling us that we got to vote by mail, you see, so we don't die of COVID at the polling places. And we're buying this? People are out in the street doing protests. People are going to church all the time. Super spreaders like Sturgis, the motorcycle rally, they come and go, nothing happens. But we can't go to the polling places, says Joe and Nancy, because we're going to die of the COVID. Aren't you just a little bit embarrassed by the fact that you're buying this Barbara Streisand? You see, you know why Biden's doing this? You know why they're doing this? Because COVID is the only chance that Uncle Joe's got. Don't you get it? And this is all part of the plan. This has been the plan since the beginning. Remember when they were talking about 18 months? Well, it looks like they were right. Gates and Fauci warning the world last year already, before anybody had ever heard of the Wuhan virus, that a global pandemic was coming. And now, as we just showed you, Bill Gates is saying another one's coming. We have become mentally challenged that we're buying into this nonsense. I mean, they told us that the pandemic was coming before it came, then it landed, and then they started talking about vaccines, and then 18 months of the new normal, shut down the restaurants, shut down the churches, you know? And then knowing that the virus would never, ever prove deadly enough on its own to terrorize the nation into compliance, they started talking testing. Remember? They started blasting Trump very early on for not testing enough. He doesn't care. Remember? Testing, testing, testing. It was like ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. Like crazy little chatty Cathy dolls pulling their own string, right? Testing, testing, testing. So Donald Trump, the Trump administration, they started testing, all right? They started testing like there's no tomorrow. Attempting as best they could to avoid the lynch mob on cable TV, to avoid the political fallout from not testing enough. They started testing. And guess what happened? The number of cases went up. The cases went high because they found fragments of COVID, which is exactly what they were looking for. People weren't sick. They weren't dying. But the cases went up. They're not even scaring us with the virus anymore. It's just the cases, the cases. They're not scaring us with death. They're not scaring us with ventilators. Just cases, more cases. Cases are coming to get you. Oh, my. And all the while, the death rate from this thing has been plummeting. What about this do you not understand? And now even when the percentage of positive test results is dropping, they're still out there, night after night, scaremongering, ramping up the fear. Joe Biden is campaigning right now, for the first time probably in the history of the world, on your fear. No positive message, no hope and change, no Morning in America speeches. He's campaigning on the fear that they have instilled in you using their media machine for the past 6, 7, 8 months. He's campaigning on it. And what are they telling us now? We're going to run out of hospital beds. Here it comes. Put on your mask. Never mind that we didn't run out of hospital beds back in March and April at the height of the pandemic. This time, we really are going to run out of hospital beds. And you're going to die in the street trying to get into your hospital bed where you'll get your ventilator. That's going to save your life. And we're buying this. Don't you see what's going on here? It's a game. It's all a game. It's a charade. It's bait and switch. It's Halloween.
It's creepy Uncle Joe.
Oh, it's funny. It's Joe.
Come on, man. Candy's for the kids.
Maybe he forgot.
Wait a minute. You look familiar. Who are you?
That clip's trying to be funny. To me, it's deadly serious. That's exactly what's going to happen. As soon as this old goat gets in there, he's gone. And we got our first female president. Have you ever noticed this? They're the most racist, sexist party, the Democrats. All I care about is race. All I look at is skin color. Remember, we were supposed to be colorblind. That's what Martin Luther King told us. But all we care about is Biden chose a woman. Biden chose a black woman. And that's supposed to show progress. To me, that shows regress. I don't know where it's all going to end. People say the polls are wrong. Are the polls wrong? How do the polls get it so wrong in 2020? I mean, how do they retain any credibility if they pull another 2016 whopper? I don't know that the polls are so dead wrong. Trump's out there campaigning awful hard, and Joe's sitting in his basement like he doesn't care, like he knows he's going to win. I'm trying real hard to stay positive. From what I can see, Donald Trump needs nothing less than a miracle. As the Democrats are going to cheat. Obviously, they're well into that already. Half the Republicans hate Trump. Yeah, you saw that the mega nuns the other night at the rally in Ohio. And some character named Vroom or something outs all these beautiful nuns, tells everybody where they live. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. Draws a red line to show exactly who these nuns were that were backing Trump. And then he tells everybody where they are. Now, why would he do that? Unless he was hoping some peaceful protesters were going to show up outside the nuns' convent, you see? But this guy was a Republican, the guy that did this Vroom guy. The UN's trying to stop Trump with all the power in the world, all the money in the world. The WHO, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, big tech, even the Vatican. They're all working night and day to defeat this guy. And we're out there going, it's going to be a landslide. God, I hope so. I pray to God that you're right. Francis just made Wilton Gregory a cardinal. Everybody's talking about Russian interference. So what about Vatican interference? I've been saying that for 5 months, too. The Vatican is interfering in the U.S. election. Why is no one cared about it? No one cares. They just gave the red hat to a guy who made international headlines a little while ago by blasting Donald Trump as the nation descended into chaos and Trump tried to remind us all about God. Think about that. This is the most pro-life administration in the history of our country since Roe versus Wade. And Pope Francis taps the most anti-Trump bishop in America to get the red hat. You see? See what's going on here? How is this not Vatican interference in the U.S. elections? So Trump's got a heck of a fight ahead of him. We all do. What are we going to do? Well, obviously, we're going to get ready for war. We're going to stay positive, but we're getting ready for war. A war that's going to last a long time. And some of you were surprised that we brought in Steve Bannon to last week's Catholic Identity Conference in Pittsburgh. That conference, by the way, was a huge, huge success.
Hey everyone, Tess Mullins again, producer here at Remnant TV. If you'd like to see Mr. Bannon's speech from this year's Catholic Identity Conference, as well as Michael Matt's, Dr. Stephen Mosier's, and so many others, just go to remnantnewspaper.com right now and sign up for the entire CIC Video On Demand package. The CIC was a huge success, and you won't be disappointed. So that's remnantnewspaper.com. Just click the banner and sign up and start watching right now. Thanks so much.
Take a look at Steve Bannon here, and you tell me why. You tell me why I shouldn't welcome this guy. You shouldn't welcome this guy to our fires here on this side of the battlefield anytime.
Oh, right. It's not just the Catholics voting for Biden. It's look at what the Pope's talking about with this Green New Deal and this really return to neo-paganism, right? With many people in the church. And look at the church. Look, I came from a working class Irish Catholic family. I was a altar boy, and my parents were the first parents that fought to get Latin Mass back in the diocese we're in, the Diocese of Virginia, and really went and formed the first church with Tridentine Catholics because and my dad's 99 and he's a Latin Mass devotee. He's a guy that actually thinks EWTN's gotten a little liberal. Just kidding, EWTN. No, but I mean he's a big believer. I mean he's a guy who goes to the Remnant every day. But this is the point. A smaller group of dedicated people that live this and fight for it every day is what is necessary. And that's why this conference is so important. And that's why the meaning of this conference. And look at the speakers. You unite that power of these speakers and you put an action plan in back of this, we can do mighty work.
Something good is happening right now that's going to transcend this election. That's going to go on for a long, long time. Because what we're watching is the total disintegration of the middle, of the status quo. It's the end of the squishy middle ground, both in this country and in the Catholic Church. And that's the silver lining. That's the good news. This can't go on forever, and it won't. We're also witnessing what I call the revenge of clarity. History is going to cast this character, Francis, as the great clarifier, right? He's made it very clear to everyone what's going on here. And Francis is like the Joe Biden of popes. You know, thanks to him, papolatry is dead. That's great news. And everyone with eyes to see now knows what the revolution of modernism in the Catholic Church was all about. Which is why we get so impatient with those who say it was just a snobby little preference for Latin in our liturgy. Drives me nuts. Because what we were fighting for, what my father was fighting, what my grandfather was fighting, Michael Davis was fighting, Archbishop Lafayette, what they were all fighting for was the social reign of Christ the King against this rise of a new world order, a Christophobic new world order. That's it. That's what it is. That's what it's been all along. And for 500 years, these same forces have been trying to destroy Christendom. Why? Because they need to destroy the monarchy. They need to destroy the Christian confessional states. Why? Because they needed the church to be out of the way in order to make room for the new world order that's rising up before us right now. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's been going on for a long, long time, and here it is. And thank God in politics, in geopolitics, this guy Donald Trump has smoked out the same modernist, Christophobic anti-Christians with whom we as traditional Catholics have been at war for a long time, more than half a century. You see, these are the one-worlders who've been trying again to undermine, infiltrate the Catholic Church for centuries, but especially over the past 100 years. And the Trump phenomenon has forced the deep state and the deep church to go public with their unholy alliance, and the ranks of the children of light are swelling because of it. This is what Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano has been saying constantly. That's why he's so supportive of Donald Trump, because he sees this through the Christocentric lens. And he sees the hand of God in this. And he sees who Trump's enemies are. And he says, those are our enemies. Those are the enemies of the church. You see? That's why we've been supporting this guy. Not because of his personal holiness, but because of who his enemies are. And Steve Bannon's the same way. And in his case, he publicly credited traditionalists, the remnant, with having been in this fight, the fight that he's now fighting, for a long time, from the start, in fact. Check this out.
But I'm particularly honored to be introduced by Michael Matt, because the Matt family shows, with their 150-year commitment to traditional Catholic journalism and excellence in journalism, what that unbroken chain means.
You know, what are we supposed to do? Wait for men to become angels and saints before we allow them to jump down into this foxhole with us? I don't think so. Lots of folks are jumping into the foxhole right now. Praise God for that. And then we can continue the discussion, theological discussions, as we go along. The point is, we're all standing against demons all of a sudden. And isn't it nice to not be alone anymore? You know, Francois Charette, the great general of the Vendée in France, the great opposition to the French Revolution, the leader of the Vendéans, you know, he had mistresses. He was certainly no saint. He didn't just hop off a holy card, believe me, when he joined the Royal and Catholic Army and he beat back the godless French Revolution. He gave his life to do that, and finally he dies a martyr's death for the holy cause of altar and throne. He was no saint when he got started in that campaign. Lots of us now are going to start waking up. Lots of people are going to follow the same route. When you realize you're up against demons, well, you better try to fight them not just with swords, but with prayer and fasting and penance and the spiritual weapons as well. See, because we're all sinners and we're all flawed. And Bannon himself pointed this out at the Catholic Identity Conference last weekend.
You know, you couldn't find two more imperfect instruments than Donald J. Trump and Stephen K. Bannon. On that, I will guarantee you. But Donald J. Trump represents an absolutely existential threat to the globalist system. And what that threat is you. He actually gives the forgotten man and woman. He gives the traditionalist. He gives working class and middle class Catholics and working class and middle class Christians a seat at the table. And to be in the room and be in the deal.
Bottom line is this, friends. We're running out of time, so I'm going to cut it short on a positive note, despite the fact that we're all apprehensive about next week. But the bottom line is this. Whether every soldier out here on the battlefield realizes it or not, the reign of the Antichrist will have found its foundation in this new world order that we all see right now. And you don't have to be a traditional Catholic to see that, to recognize that. Powerful people in high places have declared war on the enemies of the cross. And rather than shun them because they're broken vessels like the rest of us, we need to carry this banner of Christ the King out onto the battlefield, meet them halfway, shake their hand, and welcome them to the fight. Why? Because this is a holy war against this ape of God, which is waging a global campaign right now to eradicate Christianity from the face of the earth. And we need to fight back. And no matter what happens next Tuesday, friends, hold it together. Don't lose it if we don't win. Because this isn't the end of the war. This is the beginning, no matter what happens. And thank God now, as his battle lines are so clear, we're no longer alone in the trenches, as many of us have been and many of us have felt for a long, long time. It's not the case anymore. The blindfolds have been removed, thanks be to God. And we must not measure our success by the degree to which we remain insignificant in our ghettos and pose no threat to the enemies of God. It's time to come out of the ghettos. It's time to leave the safety of the catacombs and go up topside and fight like hell, because hell is what we're up against. God wills this. Everything is becoming clear. Traditionalism is being completely vindicated right now. The smoke has lifted, and the battle lines are clearly drawn right now. So keep praying, keep fighting, and be confident that no matter what happens next week, the clans are uniting. If God is for us, friends, who really cares who's against us? I'm Michael Matt from Remnant TV, and we'll see you next week.